Right. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. Wanted to start with just a quick set of reminders. I think attendance has been pretty low across everyone's office hours, and Lost has been pretty much empty. So just a reminder, those resources are there for you to help you understand the material better. If you're struggling with the project, go to the project office hours, reach out to your TAs. If you have questions on the self-test, if you find you're getting them wrong, the self-tests are kind of the bare minimum. They should be an easy recap of the lecture for you. If that's not the case, make sure you're going to office hours. And finally, do go to law section. I would love to believe that no one in this class is lost on anything at all, but I know I'd be kidding myself. So if you find you need help, do reach out. And if there's some reason why somehow, in a logistics sense, the office hours are not working out for you or law section's not working out for you, let us know. I'm not sure what we can do about it, but we can try. Okay? So plan for today, just a few points. I want to wrap up on BGP, a few corrections on the self-tests that were out there, and then we are finally going to move on from routing, move on to a different part of networking. So just a quick set of corrections. In the last lecture, I put up a slide like this that gave a prioritized order in which operators will apply BGP attributes to implement policy. I had MED above the IGP path. Someone pointed out, so just a reminder, MED is your neighbor telling you which link they would like you to send in traffic on. And the IGP cost is me as a network choosing to do what we were calling hot potato routing and using as little of my bandwidth. So choosing which link I'm going out on. And we talked about how MED and IGP can be in conflict with each other. And I certainly implied in my discussion that most providers would do the selfish thing and minimize use of their bandwidth, even if that means ignoring the MED attribute advertised. I then put this up, which has MED reversed from IGP cost. If you look at the slides that I posted, so someone caught me on this, they were absolutely right. If you look at the slides I posted, I reversed the order to have IGP on top and MED below. I do want to point out that the original one is a completely valid policy. If, as a provider, you choose to be generous over being selfish, that's entirely up to you and that's entirely acceptable. But certainly this is more consistent with the kind of discussion we were having in class. Okay? So that was point number one. Point number two was this question on the self-test. So the question was said, is it possible for different routers within a domain to choose a different next hop AS? Most of you said it was true. The answer I provided was that it was false. My answer was wrong. So you guys were actually right. There is a discussion on Piazza clearing up this confusion if you want to go read it. I did want to elaborate on it. There was a particular point I was trying to get at with the question where the answer would have been false, but the question was entirely badly phrased. So you guys got the right answer for the most part. But let me explain both the confusion and what I was trying to get at with the question. So if you remember, we had a figure like this, and we said AS7018 over here, which is AT&T, is trying to pick a path going to AS88, which is Princeton in this case. And there are many policies that AT&T could choose to get to Princeton in this context. For example, AT&T could say, I'm always going to pick AS100 as my preferred next hop AS. Okay, you could do this by setting the local preference attribute to be better, to favor AS100. You could also say, I'm actually going to try and split my traffic across both AS100 and AS200. This might be the case if I have two providers. I've given them an equal local preference. In this case, they even have an equal AS path length. Okay. The point is, whatever the policy you have, ultimately, as an autonomous system, you're going to pick one particular policy per destination. Okay? So that policy may have one or more next hop ASs. So you guys were right in saying you could have two different ASs as your next hop. The point I was trying to get at a little was that, and my question was wrong, but just so you understand what that point was, is that once I pick a policy, BGP is designed such that every router is going to consistently enforce that policy. So it should never be the case that the policy intended to choose AS100, and somehow there's some random router in the middle of the domain that's sending packets to AS200. So you can think of BGP as a distributed enforcement of a single policy. So my question, ill-phrased, that's what I was trying to test that point. But bottom line, if this was your question, the answer was yes, and my apologies for the mistake on this. Any questions on this self-test question? No? Okay, good. The last thing to cover on BGP, I know some of you did this in section yesterday, but not all of the sections got to it, so let me cover it here.
Sorry,
Yeah. Yes, so the AS as an entity, as one logical entity, picks one policy. That policy yields some number of next hop ASs. Routers don't pick policy, it's the operator of the network, but they do enforce the policy. They implement the policy. And that implementation is distributed.
Right, so how can the router itself pick different next hop? It's always going to pick the same next hop program.
It shouldn't. By design, BGP is trying to design it so that every router has the same information and they're running the same decision logic. So that was the true or false. It should be false, that two routers could make different decisions. But it's false by design. BGP is designed so that all the routers are doing the right thing. You could imagine that somebody misconfigured a router where, for example, it had the order reversed in that particular, the decision policy it's making at that router locally was misconfigured to implement a different policy. That would be a mistake, would be an error.
So how usually then how it's true? How this is true then?
Oh.
If the router is always going to pick the same policy, how is it true that it can pick different?
Because your policy could be such that you're splitting traffic across two next hop ASs. So your policy could be that I have two next hop ASs. So the example here, this would be a great example where, let's say, both of these are either peers or providers for AS7018. So I would give them an equal local preference. And then if you look at the path going to Princeton, they're equal length paths. So they're equal in terms of preference. They're equal in terms of AS path length. I could, for example, as a policy say, I'm going to use the IGP cost to split traffic between 100 and 200. So some routers that are closer to here will go this way. Some routers that are here will choose the other path. So single policy that you choose, the policy could imply multiple next hops, but routers must consistently enforce this choice. Okay? Any other? Okay, so policy oscillations. If you remember back to the last lecture, we said that in this world, where everyone follows both the assumptions and the rules for GAU-Rexford policies, then we have guaranteed reachability and we have guaranteed convergence in route selection. But I also said that if we were in the land of general policies or people were not following GAU-Rexford, then we actually have no way of proving that you will have reachability or that you will have convergence. And so I wanted to end that discussion with just an example of how this can happen and what it means to not have convergence in BGP. So here's the example. We have 4 ASs, and we're going to talk about reaching AS0. Okay, in this, how all the other ASs reach AS0. That's why I have that silly icon there for the destination. If you look at the AS customer-provider relationships in this graph, 1, 2, and 3 both have 2 providers. So 2, for example, is a customer of 0, but it is also a customer of 1. So it has 2 providers here. The same is true of 1. 1 is a customer of 0, and 1 is a customer of 3. 3 is also a customer of 0, and 3 is a customer of 2. This violates which one of our GAU-Rexford assumptions? Anyone remember those assumptions?
The single value principle
the single value principle follows from applying the Gao-Rexford rules on an AS topology that has two assumptions. Just a reminder, one of those assumptions was that there are no cycles in the customer-provider relationship. We're violating that here. 2 is a customer of 1, 1 is a customer of 3, and then 3 turns around and is a customer of 2. So we have a cycle here. Okay? Is everyone clear on the setup? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, question?
Is that to say policy oscillation only occurs when this rule is violated?
When the rules hold, you're guaranteed you won't have policy. And